So let's just take a look at these little unusual things in these photographs. One thing you'll notice, this is Apollo 15. The ground is very, very dry, very dusty, and you have an astronaut coming up here, so-called collecting rock samples. As you can see, here are the tracks down here. Rover sitting here where they drove along, but there's a track that goes straight down, just one tire track goes straight down in through into here. These guys were just messing around, just having fun with this rover. They came down right through there. They must have really piled through that and making this thing bounce a lot. So they get there, you can see that they've been walking around on here, disturbed all the soil so much that you can't even see those tracks. That's how dry it is. It just goes straight into here and disappears. You don't see any tracks past that just because of their footprints on there. And the same here. This is Apollo 15, so the rear fenders are still in place. Here it is sitting, you can hardly see anything, it's so dry. And then we come into a little different spot where they're right at the edge of Hadley Rill. This is Hadley Rill up here, and we'll zoom in a bit. There are no rover tracks anywhere to be seen here, none, because they've walked down to this rock. And you see it here, there's no rover tracks coming in or out. They've detached the scoop from the handle and it's just sitting on top of there. We can have a quick look at Hadley Rill. This is approximately 1.5 kilometers across and about 1,200 feet deep. If you were on the observation deck of the CN Tower, or if you were up on the Empire State Building, this should be the same view looking down into this.
If that's 1.5 kilometers across, then why can we see those small rocks there?
This is about the same distance if you pulled up a view of Meteor Crater. Hadley Rill is about twice the depth of Meteor Crater.
Right, but I can't see any rocks in Meteor Crater that are that clear.
No, but this is it all the way across. So if it's 1.5 kilometers across, you're already looking at probably 5-kilometer distance down here. And you can still see the detail. Even way down here, you can still see all of the stuff on the other side.
Look at that hot spot.
Oh, there's a hot spot here, right here behind his head all the time. Right here, here's an arm. There's a little crater right there, so the shadow kind of disappears, but that's the astronaut is standing right here. But he's not right there, because we're going to go ahead a few photographs as this pans around. And here's the astronaut down here.
What?
Okay? And he can't be in two places at one time. Here he is standing here. You can look at him here. He's right here, and yet there he is down there. And I don't know how you can have 3 astronauts on the lunar surface. And here again, of course, when you're looking up here, this is 1.5 kilometers across, and then you're looking up here 3, 4, 5, 6 kilometers up, and you can still see all of the detail.
How deep is that?
That's supposed to be 1,200 feet deep down to here.
1,200 feet deep? Are you kidding?
Yeah. And this would be about 6, 7 kilometers up. That's 1.5 kilometers across from here to here. And the maps are out there showing that. All of the geological maps are out there to show the actual depth of this. You wouldn't be able to see any of this detail up there on that distance. Looking at that distance, you'd be like 4 times the width of Meteor Crater out at that, because this is the width of Meteor Crater right there.
And once again, you can see all the smaller rocks inside of the trench.
You're standing here, from here across to here is 1.5 kilometers. And the detail here is unbelievable. I mean, either a Hasselblad camera is just the most incredible piece of machinery that's ever put out there, that it can focus to here and zoom that in at the same time, all in one shot. And then we start to come across here, and here are the tire tracks of the rover. There are no tracks in front. We just went around and panned through. There are no other rover tracks anywhere in this panoramic scene that we're looking at.
What is that by the tire?
I don't know, but that is one unusual. It's got pieces of stuff sticking out of there. There's a post sticking out of there and a post sticking out of there.
What?
I think it's I don't know, it looks like a piece of metal equipment that comes down and bends across there. But it's not part of this little crater. because it's sitting up, and there's an unusual piece down here on the ground as well.
This is a veritable junkyard.
Oh yeah, if you look in here, you'll see it all the same thing too, right? Rover come over and dug some stuff up here, like pulled it up as it drove through it. And there's a little bit of stuff in there. Looks like a chain right there.
That doesn't belong there.
Whatever you were driving through, they pulled something up. They didn't cover the ground too deep with the junk that's on here. That's where it stops. You can see there's a footprint right there. The tracks go into the back of the rover. There's no tracks out the front. There's no tracks in between the tires, and nothing out the front.
I can see tracks between the rover, but I don't see any tracks on the other side or on the side that it was stuck in.
Right. And here's the entire pan. There's the edge of the track right there. It just stops, and there's nothing out here. Only footprints. There's a little bit of a track way the hell out here. The track is running out there, so they did come in from this direction, but to do this scene, they must have re-groomed all of this. It looks like it's freshly sprayed in here.
Geez, that's really strange, though.
Yeah.
You would think that that rover would have had to have driven into it and then got stuck and then drove out, but that's not what you see. It actually looks like it's driven in and then got pulled back out again. They couldn't make it through that little crater or whatever that is.
I have no idea what the hell this is.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. It's obviously got a drive shaft or something right in the middle of it. It could be an old electric motor. Just a piece of junk out of the junkyard. And you'll see little twisted pieces of stuff like this. Everything else is out there. It should be more defined. There's only a little defined spot here. But where it disappears in here, where there's no footprints or anything, right? It's coming a little bit there and then it completely disappears. That wouldn't happen. This has been all re-groomed.
There's your third astronaut on the moon, so-called moon.
He's right there. His shadow is right there. Absolutely, because there's that guy and this guy.
There's nothing there, right? There's just the rover and the two astronauts, and that shadow that's on the left-hand side, there's nothing there. So it has to be a third astronaut because there's the glove, there's the arm.
Oh, he's definitely there. I would have thought this shadow would have gone through. This is a little bit of a crater here. I thought it would have gone all the way through and shot onto the other side, but the lighting effects that they were using, maybe it didn't do that.
And you can see his pocket.
Here's the other astronaut shadow. It actually, of course, he's closer to this crater here. This guy's moved over a little bit over to here to shoot down to this rock. This is at the edge, so it's planted right about here in this photograph. And that's fairly deep. That's fairly deep, sharp crater. So maybe his shadow did fall off that way. Because there it is there. There's the edge of it there.
Yeah, but you could still see his arm in his pocket and his hand.
Oh, yeah. He's standing right there. When I back up to it, he's right there. And then you just come through these photographs like this. And there's the astronaut. 1, 2, and 3.
So it's like a panoramic.
Yeah, this is a panoramic, and there's 3 guys standing there.
Wow.
And don't forget when they were practicing, you had the main team, right? They would be out on the training, plus they had the other 3 for backup. This photograph here, they are shooting. There is just the edge of the mountain right there. Completely blacked out. And there's no way the aperture is going to pick this up. Then you go to the next one, and there's the only edge that's going up. Okay, you can see a bit of a hot spot here. It's not overexposed here. Like, look at these. Not overexposed, right? Completely blacked out. Then you get that. And that's right into the sunlight. They're pretty amazing cameras that you can have that right there and there.
If he had opened the aperture at that point, then the satellite dish would have been overexposed, but it's not.
Yeah, but this is still blacked out. It's a little bit more exposed, but I don't know how you could pull that up because you can't pull detail out of blackness. I don't care how you pull the exposure up.
There's a reflection of a light over on the right-hand side again.
Oh yeah, well you're right into it here. The lighting. And that's just way too big. But you see, even if you have here, see the crater down here?
Yeah.
This has been brought up. Why didn't this get brought up? See, it's black. These are black. These are black. How come they stayed black?
The only thing that's come up is the mountain.
Yeah. Amazing cameras. Too bad they don't make them this good today. This particular photograph here, the height of the LEM being about 24 feet high and about 32 feet across at the legs. Down here when the legs are open, of course. The rover is supposed to be 10 feet. 5 foot when it's folded, 10 feet total when it's sitting there. In a sitting position, his helmet is at a leg that is 12 feet high. It's on a bit of an angle, but the total leg is 12 feet high up to that platform. If you measure the distance between here and here, which is 10 feet, it comes down, it's almost 2 feet. It's more than twice the length of what it should be, the rover in here. If this is 32 feet across, it's actually more than that. It's probably about 24 feet long, this thing. If this is a photographic anomaly showing that kind of a perspective on the thing, it is up just slightly higher on the elevation. It looks to be very close to the LEM, but if it is a lot closer to the camera, you could have this effect to make it look very large.
What interests me is that he has his hand right at the top of that strut.
Right, he's able to, in a seated position, appear to be able to reach the 12-foot high. I have looked at this LEM very, very closely. It is a full-scale version of it. It does not appear to be a miniature or a model. And this is the rover that is driven around, because we do have the sequence of it being driven around. These are the first EVA in Apollo 17. And none of the equipment, you see there's none of the equipment on the back, the cameras and the antenna is not there. And of course, again, if they're using the antenna, because there's no high gain antenna now on the LEM, and there's no high gain antenna deployed on the ground, and there's no high gain antenna deployed on the rover, how are they transferring this signal, any signal or communications? Because that high gain antenna has taken over all of the communications, and they need that high gain antenna to have color televisions and for all the communications. None of it is deployed at this point in time, and that's been the argument about whether Apollo 11 didn't have a high gain antenna, so 12 and 14 did, and then the rest of them don't, because the high gain antenna has been deployed on the rover. But if the rover isn't set up yet, what are they using? And there's no gap in communications or anything else during that entire length of time. So if the equipment's not set up, they shouldn't be able to communicate. And yet, here they are. Just another anomaly, not just the size and perspective of this particular photography that was being done here, but all of the other details. You can see the panels have been replaced from Apollo 16, and I covered that once before. These are the ones that are blown out. So this is not a miniature.
That's a strange perspective.
It is. It is one of the most unusual perspectives I've ever seen, and I'm quite sure that a camera expert could reproduce that.
How high is it from the ground to the door?
Oh, you're at 12 foot off the ground.
So that would mean that his head is at 12 feet.
Your 12 foot is right in here.
Oh, his head's almost at 12 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, he could reach 12 feet sitting on the rover. It's pretty amazing. But like I said, that rover would be about 24 feet long in that photograph.
Yeah, I could understand it if the rover was closer to the camera, but the rover is right next to the LEM. Well, it looks like he's reaching out to touch it.
Yeah, that is part of the perspective. It looks like he's actually touching the back leg at the top, which is another part of the imaginary perspective out there, because he couldn't possibly do that. I would have to measure to see how far it is between the two legs at the top where the struts go into. The bottom is 32 feet across, so to fit inside the Saturn V rocket, right, I think they had to be under 24 feet in there for it to fit in. But he couldn't possibly be in front and reach back to the back legs, so that's where you're seeing that camera illusion happening. The whole physical size of him, I mean, his legs would have to be about 8 feet long just to sit in there on a rover that's 24 feet across.
If he got out of that rover and stood up, the top of his helmet would be right at that porch, or maybe even a little higher.
He'd be able to reach the retros. They're about 18 feet off the ground.
There is really something strange going on here.
The previous photograph shows that he drove around from the back up to the front of it, and even they're a little odd because he's only driving from the back of the vehicle to the front of it.
So if the tracks are there, well, that would mean
Right.
that he's driven it there.
But here's the thing. Now you take this photograph, right? Now he looks like he's a little tiny guy. And people could say, oh, well, that's just a little tiny model, right? How did they make a model that's really tiny here? You can see that there is a bit of a raised elevation here. But as he comes around, I mean, he's only driving back 50 feet going through these photographs, right? This picture, he looks way bigger. And then you come backwards around. I don't know what kind of a zoom on the camera or anything else creates him to be tiny to up there to be incredibly large, but it's the most unusual pictures I've ever seen as far as perspective goes.